Hello and welcome back everyone to episode 56 of the Blaise XPerience. I'm your host Derek once again, and I do want to apologize real quick. I know that we did not have an episode last week at all. We were planned to have a Saturday episode about State of Decay, and that was the first time since episode 11 I missed an episode on Saturday, so I do apologize for that, but it was basically because Undead Trials was going on, and that did take up a lot of my time, and I was getting no sleep like all week. I had 24 hours of sleep for the whole week, so basically 3 hours a day. So that's kind of what happened there, and I figured rather than try to rush a bad episode, I would just do an extra one this week. So basically today's episode was supposed to be about Forza Horizon, but I decided to cancel that episode, and instead I'm going to do an extra episode on a recap of Undead Trials 2. So today's episode will be a recap of Undead Trials 2. I have a special guest who we'll announce in a second, and we'll kind of talk through Undead Trials, talk about some of our favorite matches, the championship, things like that. And then, of course, on Saturday, we will have a brand new episode about State of Decay, so it'll be a different topic. I'm probably going to talk about the Warlord Legacy. That's probably what my plan is right now, so that will be Saturday's episode. But without further ado, we have a new episode today. And just quickly, my next stream will probably be sometime on Thursday. I don't exactly know what time it is yet, but it's probably going to be Thursday night if I had to guess. So tune in on Thursday night, and we will have another stream. And like I said earlier, Saturday will be the next podcast. So definitely tune into that. But without further ado, I do have a guest here today. Our guest is actually the champion of Undead Trials 2. He defended his title. He won for a second time in a row. Please welcome to the show, Falldowngoboom.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Pretty good.
And hello,
yourself?
Blaise. Thank you. I'm doing well, and thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on. You did defend your title, so congratulations once again on that. You did a great job on there.
Thanks. I mean, it was hard. It was a lot. I'm not going to say it was harder than the first one because the competition was just as fierce, and there were more people this time. So I feel lucky that I was able to take part in both of them, and that I was able to find the items that I needed to in the early matches, and just get that win.
Yeah, definitely. You did a great display of performance there, and kind of like you said too, with Undead Trials 1, I mean, we had a solo contest and a duo contest. In the solo contest, I think we had about 10 to 12 people. So this time we actually had 70 or 65 people enter. So from 10 to 12 to 65, that's a big jump. So definitely congrats on winning out of 65.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't think it can be overstated the kind of the level of competition that we had in this particular Undead Trials. Like some of these matches were insane from the very beginning, from round one until semifinals and into the championship. I mean, it was lights out. It was awesome from top to bottom. And
I'm glad you were able to take part. I'm glad everyone seemed to have fun. Everyone seemed to really enjoy it. So I definitely appreciate that. And I want to give a shout out to K Sizzle and Mr. Dart for, helping me organize this thing. They did a great job organizing this with me. So between the three of us, we put on a great show, I think.
Hear, hear.
And I want to also thank all the refs that helped us out. We had Sarkoth helping out, Maris, we had Andy, I Kill You, Harsh and Death Crow ref for a match. So we had a lot of refs in there helping out. Big Red. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, so I apologize to anyone forgetting, but we had a lot of refs help us out, so I appreciate everyone.
And there was Sarkoth was in there too.
Yes, I did get him, but I might have missed somebody.
And Maris as well. I didn't hear. I don't know if you said Maris.
I did, yes, but that's all right.
Okay.
We can give him a shout out. He can get a second shout out. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. But yeah, basically this tournament, if anyone didn't know already, this was a week-long tournament, which actually we had to go to an 8th day to finish it, but just because everything was so crunched in, so we had to go to an 8th day to finish the championship. But basically it was supposed to be a 7-day tournament, and we had different rounds. It was double elimination, so there were 7 different mini-games that we had, and throughout these mini-games, we would eliminate people slowly. So round 1, if you got your first loss, you go into a loser's bracket. If you got a win, you go into winner's bracket, and so on. And that kind of continued throughout the week. And basically, Sunday the 16th is when we had the championship. And the championship was myself versus Maris versus Falldown here. And Falldown did get first. Maris took second, and I got third. And even that championship, I would definitely say was a tight contest the whole way. I mean, Maris, had to be beaten like 3 out of 5 times in order to lose. So
Yeah, it was. It was 3 out of 5 actually, because I had to win the first two, or I had to win two, in order to force a final match with Maris. And if he had gotten those 2 wins, then that would have been it. I mean, he was the only person in the entire tournament that made it to the finals without losing a single game. So, he had one leg up on both you and me, Blaise.
definitely. And, definitely props to him for that, because out of 65 people, he's the only one that made it to the end without losing it. That's crazy. And in terms of yourself, you're obviously coming in as a defending champion. And then for me, basically my only loss coming into that, I lost to Maris by 2 seconds. And that just kind of gives the level of competition we had during this. Like, some of the losses were that close that, 2 seconds was the difference between winning and losing.
And that wasn't the only one. I mean, Scarproof lost his round 1 match by 3 seconds, right? In the backed into a corner.
Correct. So there were some very, very close competitions, and even to get to the championship, I had to actually face Scarproof, who you mentioned, and I only beat him by 12 seconds. So that just shows how close this whole tournament was.
Yeah, and it's not the same game either. For those of you who weren't able to tune in and check out some of the matches, I mean, there were different games that were related to time and time trials and things like that. So we're talking about different games here that across the board, the level of effort and the level of competition and skill was incredibly high, because we're talking about multiple different versions of games and multiple different game types that were generated for this tournament. And in each case, there were examples where it came down to a split second or, a single decision that cost someone the win or cost someone the loss.
Correct. And, without further ado, we should probably get into some of the games, because some people might want to hear more about them. So, couple of the games that we didn't really use much in the tournament, and this is because they didn't really work out as well. They weren't as fair as we kind of originally thought of them as, and they didn't really offer as much excitement as we originally thought. Backed in the Corner, which you mentioned, that was only done one time, and Jug Razor, that was also only done one time during the whole tournament. And that's because we tried them out. They didn't really seem to work as well as the other games, so we only did those one time each, but I don't know if you got a chance to check out those games.
I did. I think that Backed in a Corner has potential for Undead Trials 3. I think that Jug Razor has just kind of a fundamental problem with how it's being done, or just in general, how Jug Razor worked was each participant took a crossbow and tried to get as many arrows into a juggernaut, into a juggernaut's head as possible before it died. But the problem was, when you went first, everyone else knew how many arrows they had to shoot. So by the time the third person went, they were like, okay, well, I have to shoot more than 22, otherwise I lose. So there wasn't that element of surprise. There wasn't that element of risk that some of the other games had in them. So I think that one's going to be hard to retool appropriately. It might be, a time trial for how quickly you can take them down with a crossbow or something along those lines, but just in and of itself, I don't know that one is. I didn't like that one that much. I think Backed in the Corner is awesome, and I think that with some retooling, it's going to be incredible for the next trials.
I kind of agree with you too, and kind of like you were saying, Jug Razor. I mean, the problem with it is basically just like you were saying. If you go first, you're pretty much screwed. I mean, unless the other person really can't shoot that many into the Juggernaut, but like the one time we did it, I think the person had, okay, I shot 20 in there, I stopped, and then the next person, they know, okay, well, all I have to do is shoot 21, and then I win. Like, that's all I have to do. So they don't have to think about anything. All they literally have to do is just, okay, I know what number I have to hit. There we go, I hit it. I'm done. Like, and that's not really what we were kind of going for with games. So that's definitely a game that I don't think will be coming back. Backed in a Corner, just to give a little bit more context on this one. Basically, there's a building in State of Decay 2 that is a 2-story building, and it only has one entrance, and the entrance goes up the stairs. And I kind of had the idea when making that game, why don't we put a horde in front of those stairs? That way somebody has to go through the horde and then get to an outpost to call time, and it's kind of a timed event. The problem, though, is that we've discovered that the zombies wouldn't actually go up the stairs because we were trying to lead them up the stairs, and the zombies wouldn't go up the stairs. So that was part of the problem with that. So we do have to retool it a little bit. I think there is a way to do like a horde-based time thing where you have to kill a certain amount of zombies in a certain amount of time. So I think it can be retooled. Just the game, based on how it was written, did not work as we wanted.
Yeah, and you can see that in the game in other places as well. If you have the corner office base, whenever you have a horde, zombies are very, very hesitant to kind of go up to that top floor. They just don't, they don't like ladders. They don't like stairs. They don't like helicopters. There are a lot of things zombies don't like. But really kind of climbing buildings is kind of tops on their list.
Yeah, it is. So, we'll have to look at that next time, and maybe we can try to lead a horde into a different area and try to do something that way. But backed in the corner the way it was written this time will definitely not be back, but it could be retooled to come back for Undead Trials 3. But we did have 5 games that I thought did work pretty well, and I think all 5 of those games will be back. Just some of them might be retooled a little bit to make them better. But out of the other 5 games, did you have a favorite game out of those 5?
Oh man, I liked all of them. I'm not gonna lie.
Me too.
Just they all had different aspects of the game that they highlighted. The ICANN, both versions of ICANN, both the customized one that Sarkoth was running, and that you ran, or that K-Sizzle ran, and the ICANN where you kind of bet on yourself. Both of those were very unique and very fun because it kind of put it in your control, and you're fighting directly against your opponent in terms of just general skill. So that was one of my favorites by far.
Yeah, ICANN was definitely the one that I kind of liked the most when I was designing it, because I like the original version. Not that I don't like the new version too. I like both of those versions, but basically the original version of ICANN is when we were kind of betting against each other. So say it's me, you, and K-Sizzle, for example. Then the referee will give us a challenge. He'll say, how many juggernauts can you kill in an hour? And then I might say, oh, I can kill 3. And then Sizzle might say, oh, I can kill 5.
I can kill 7.
Right, then you can kill 7. And then I go, well, I don't think you're going to find 7 in an hour, Fall. So then I'd be like, I challenge you to do that. And then if you don't kill 7, then basically you would be out of that round. You would get your first loss, or you'd be out of the tournament, depending if it's a loser or winner's bracket. And then if you do kill them, then I would get a loss because I challenged you and you did what I said you couldn't.
Exactly. And for me, that version of ICANN that I was a part of involved finding rucksacks. So I was able to find enough rucksacks to meet my own bet, which gave me the win.
Yeah, and I want to stop on that too, because out of the whole tournament, I thought that was one of the more impressive performances. Like, basically, I asked, it was a match between you, Andy, and Sarkoth, and I asked how many rucksacks do you find in an hour, and I forget what number Sarkoth started it at, but then you raised it to 15, and then Andy didn't want to raise it anymore, so Andy challenged you, and you actually found 15 rucksacks. No, it was 45 minutes, actually. That wasn't even an hour. So you found 15 rucksacks in 45 minutes with like 2 minutes to spare. So I was super impressed by that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't think that. So I believe Sarkoth said 5 to start off with. And in my mind, I kind of knew the map that we were on, and I knew where the restaurants were, and they were the key to my strategy. My strategy was to go to the restaurants, hit every single one of them, because food rucksacks are by far, in my opinion and in my experience, are vastly more likely to appear than any other type of ruck. So if you can find all of the restaurants and all the pubs in a map, then it's more likely to hit that number, to get that larger number. And I'd already, having thought about what I was going to do on this map, and when the rucks came up, I thought out like a path that I was going to take through it. I figured out a way to hit just about every single restaurant on the map, though I will admit afterwards, thinking about it, and I missed a couple in that first little area. But it was down to, I mean, even that was down to the wire. I think I got the last ruck with 2 minutes remaining out of 45. Yeah. So
2.5 minutes left.
Yeah.
You came out from behind the corner. You're like, Da da da. I got it, Struck Shack.
Exactly. And I mean, it goes to show, like, none of us, out of the four of us that were involved in that particular game, I would say a half of one of us thought that it was possible to do 15. And that half was me. And the other half of me said I just lost. And then, I mean, it just goes to show, like, you can plan and you can plan and you can plan and still get completely taken by surprise, by either, bad luck or bad planning or bad timing or your car exploding or, a juggernaut jumping on you out of a window, just the random things that can happen in the game that can completely derail everything that you want to do. So again, I think that it goes to show kind of the level of competitors and the level of competition that we had involved in this.
Absolutely, because I remember during that match too, as soon as you said 15, Sarkoth's first reaction was like, there's no way, that's not even possible. And then you made it happen anyways. So congrats on that.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
But actually, the second half of that competition was kind of a plague heart speed run, and this kind of showed what I like about ICANN, in that there's sort of a mental aspect to ICANN, like the original version, that you can kind of think of things that your opponent might not think about, and they kind of work to your advantage. Because the second version, where you face one-on-one with Sarkoth, I think this is actually a little bit less tense, but that's only because you thought of something that Sarkoth didn't think of. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So what happened was we started talking about the number of play cards that we could kill in a certain period of time. And we had already been on this one map for a little while, so we knew where some things were, we knew where some play cards were, and we hadn't uncovered everything. So it was decided, as we were talking about it, that we would be able to move on to another map. And in my mind, what I realized was that Sarkoth was thinking about the fact that he would have to wipe out every single play card on this map. And in my mind, I was saying, okay, I will kill the play cards that I see, and then I'm getting out of here. I'm going to a new map. I'm going to just wreck that one. And if I can keep going from there, then I'm going to. As soon as I get in that map, I'm going to have the next map loaded up so that we can, as soon as I do one loop and wipe out anything that I can easily find, we move on to the next one and we wipe out that one too. So when Sarkoth suggested that, he could do, I think he said 10 or 11, I think he said 11, I knew that he was kind of undershooting the total that was likely. So when I kind of eased it in there and just said, oh man, I don't know if I can do 12. I don't, just kind of butter it up a little bit. And I said, okay, I'll do 12. He immediately called me on it. He was like, I don't even know if I could do 11. We started the map, we started the match and started wiping out the play cards. And as soon as I wiped out the 7th, and I said, okay, we're moving to the next map, Sarkoth immediately realized what I was doing and just said, oh man, Fall, I think you got me on this one. I didn't even think about just bailing on a map early. So it was, again, it was just one of those things that I'm glad that I thought of it.
And that's what I like about the original version of ICANN. Like, I know Sarkoth's not as big a fan of it, but I think it allows for those mental, back and forth that other games don't allow for as much. Because, say, like, a Finders Keepers or a Scavenger Hunt, which we'll get into a little bit, those don't really have a lot of mental aspects between you and your opponents. It's more like you mentally versus yourself. And I think ICANN is a little bit mental versus your other opponents, and I kind of like that.
I agree. And I think that, the Finders Keepers is one of those where, like you said, it's more mental for yourself. You're looking at the map, you're trying to figure out where you can find different things. But, like you said, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Definitely. But, the original version of ICANN, that's kind of why I like it. But we can kind of talk about the new version that Sarkoth created. And I played in this new version to get to the championship. And then in the championship, K-Sizzle kind of adapted it as well, and he played it as well. So it basically was featured 2 times. It was once in the championship, and then I did this against Scarproof and Mr. Huge in the semifinals. And basically this new version that he made, it's where everyone's doing challenges, but basically he had a wheel set up, and he kind of spins on his wheel to give you 8 challenges. You have to do 8 of these challenges, as many as you can do in 30 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever the ref says. It was 30 minutes in both cases for us, but the ref could technically say 40, 45, whatever it is. And basically, these challenges, by themselves, they're not that hard for elite players. Like, it was things like CQC a play card, or CQC a Juggernaut, or CQC 2 Ferals. Just different things like that by themselves, most people in the tournament could do those things by themselves. But the challenge was actually doing them all within a time limit, because we had a 30-minute time limit to try and do all of them. And the bane of my existence in both of these was flipping cars. So I could not flip cars for the life of me, but you managed to pull that off.
Oh, it wasn't just you, man. It wasn't just you. I mean, all three of us, especially in that last match, were having trouble with it. It was an exercise in futility for a good while. We're just rolling cars down hills, drive them back up to the top of the hill, roll the car back down the hill. Felt like, I was trying to make a snowman out of cars, just very, very poorly. But I mean, I really enjoyed kind of Sarkoth's Wheel of Pain that he had put together, where you would, you could watch on his stream when he clicked the button, it would spin the wheel and it would stop on CQC 2 Ferals. And, for those that aren't familiar, CQC in the game specifically is the close combat weapon. So there's a slot for a close combat weapon, and CQC in a feral means you only use that weapon to get 2 kills on ferals, which is incredibly difficult and can easily result in kind of serious wounds that you'll then be carrying through the rest of that challenge. If a feral dives on you once and gets you to the ground, that's going to be a permanent negative on your health and your stamina for the rest of that challenge. So it goes back into kind of that mental aspect of, okay, there's a feral over there, but we're really early on in this challenge. Do I want to take this risk of diving on the feral when I have no meds and possibly kind of gimping myself for the rest of the challenge, or do I leave it behind and hope that I find 2 more? Now, the finding a second one, or finding even a first one, ended up being another challenge for all of us, where
so I didn't even find any. You only found one. So
exactly, and that was another kind of part of the challenge is, okay, these are not that common, especially on a fresh map. So do you take that risk? Do you walk away hoping that you find another one and hoping that you can hop onto, a cell tower or something like that and spot one from a distance? And in the end, I believe you and Maris found 2 and were able to kill 2. But it was kind of a stretch for both of you as well, where it took a long time.
No, actually, neither one of us did. You were the only one that even found one. So Maris and I didn't find a single. No, wait, no, Maris did find 2. Never mind. Yeah, he found 2 and he killed those, but he didn't do a different challenge I did. That's what it was.
Right.
I think Maris maybe didn't destroy the 2 cars, or I forget what it was exactly, but he didn't do one of the challenges I did. So
yeah, he didn't flip 2 cars. He flipped 1 car onto the roof, and then he destroyed 1 car. So he missed those 2. And I thought there was one other one. He didn't. So one of the other challenges was to headshot 2 bloaters, and if you headshot a bloater, it just falls over and it doesn't explode. I think he headshot 1.
I think so, yes. He partially did a lot of the challenges, but he didn't finish them. And I know one of the ones I didn't do was the play car, but that's because I wasted so much time trying to flip the cars. Like, I know, and I'm sure you know too, that I could do the play car part, just I was so focused on flipping cars I didn't have time to look for one. So
yeah, that was a case of kind of gambler's fallacy there, where after the first 6 or 7 attempts, you should have just kind of moved on. But at the same time, you're like, no, this time, if I roll those dice one more time, it's bound to come up. And it also didn't help that you had you were using I think a hatchback that had a rounded roof that makes it incredibly hard.
Not even. I was using the survey car, so that's even worse.
There you go. Yeah, it's got a pointy hat on the top of it. Trying to balance a top. So
right. But kind of like you were talking to me offline too. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, in these time-centered games like this, you just get focused on one little thing and you kind of forget the other elements, because both myself and Maris, we got frustrated at certain points and we kept trying to do things that we were losing time on. Like, if I was sitting back, like if I was watching myself play, I could have told myself, no, you shouldn't be trying to flip this card anymore. Go do something else. But in the moment, you're just kind of too focused on it, and I was losing so much time.
And you know I told you this yesterday or the day before. I actually muted myself so that I wouldn't give you that advice because, you know, you're my friend, but at the same time we were up against each other, and I wasn't going to be like,
I understand.
No, dude,
yeah,
dude,
I understand.
dude, what are you doing? Stop. Do something else. Go do something else. Come on, man.
Right. No, I totally understand because, like, outside looking in, if I was talking to myself during that match, like, with the outside perspective, I would have saw the same thing. I'd be like, why are you trying to flip a survey car? Why are you trying to waste so much time on this? But in the moment, like, you're so focused on trying to do these challenges that you don't even think of it. So.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the beauty of these challenges, though. I mean, they really, you know, get your blood pumping, and they really get you focused on trying to do things that you wouldn't normally have to do, like in a time-centered environment.
Yeah, and it's also, you can also look at them and you can watch all three of our matches and see kind of the different tactics and the different ideas that we were all going through. You know, you and Maris were kind of sticking in one area, kind of scouting around and doing stuff in that zone. And in my mind, I was trying to cover as much territory as possible to try and find everything that I needed to. And I think that, I mean, it really, either one could have worked. Any of them could have worked. And I just kind of lucked out in terms of, you know, finding what I needed to find and honestly being able to flip the car.
Right. And I know in my semifinals match too, we had some different strategies. Like, I had the strategy of going up on cell phone towers and basically trying to find everything I wanted. Okay, I was searching for play cards, I was searching for fails, different things like that. And Mr. Huge, he went second, and he had the strategy of just kind of driving around and, you know, not using that. And his strategy almost worked too because he only lost me by 5 points. So
another close one.
Yes, exactly. So he lost me by 5 points, and then Scarproof, he went third. He kind of combined both of our strategies, and that's kind of the strategy of going third. You kind of combine that, and he basically, what it came down to with him is if he would have killed one more feral, that would have given him enough points to beat me. But he found his final feral with like time ticking down to seconds, and he killed that feral with 12 seconds overtime. So basically, he would have had it if it wasn't for 12 seconds. Yeah. So I've been there though.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, we went over that a little bit just with the you know, the time limits from the start to the finish. You know, everything was so close across the board in so many of these matches that everyone, you know, the people that were watching the matches were on the edge of their seats. It's just kind of one of those things where you don't expect it to come down that close. You know, you expect with a game where you have 15 different things that you're supposed to find that it's going to be, you know, 5-minute differences and 10-minute differences and things like that. But in each case, it was, you know, a minute, 2 minutes, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. It was crazy.
And I don't know if you felt you had an easy game, but I know for the whole tournament, I didn't have an easy game at all. Like, every game I had was down to the wire.
Yeah, no, there was not a single easy game in that entire tournament for me.
Except for your freebie win, maybe that one.
I wasn't going to get into that one, but yeah, I did have the one free win where my opponents didn't show up. So we'll add that one.
They were just too scared,
easy,
yeah.
But, you know, other than that, I mean, all of the actual competitions were incredibly difficult.
Exactly. Which that's something we definitely will be looking into for future tournaments, is that we did have some people not showing up, which kind of ruined the aspects of some of the games. So we are looking into a different system to use next time. That way, if people don't show up, then it doesn't affect like the actual games of the tournament. So what we're thinking about doing is using like a World Cup group system, and then basically a couple people make it out of each group, and that way if people don't show up to their group matches, they don't make it to the actual tournament. So
makes sense. And it also, I think that it's just a case of, you know, this was an online tournament that was, you know, you didn't have to sign up with any, you know, hard thing. You didn't have to sign a contract or anything like that, anything silly. It was yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, you know, sign me up. And then life comes along and people just decide not to do it. So I don't know. I'm hoping that, you know, moving forward for Undead Trials 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, 10, we'll have a heavier, you know, involvement and a heavier dedication in the first couple of rounds. But, you know, I'm sure that no matter how much planning we do or you do, there are always going to be a couple people that are supposed to play at X time and then just don't show.
Yeah, definitely. And I understand when people have things come up and stuff, but it was frustrating that some people, you know, didn't have things come up, and they like, you would see them online playing games and they still weren't showing up to the match. It's like, well, why are you online playing games? You're not even showing up to your match. But it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. And especially in some cases where, there wasn't a notification from the player saying, oh, by the way, I'm not feeling it. I don't really want to do this. I watched a match and it's not, it's not something that I'm interested in anymore. It was more of the, the ghosting was kind of annoying, and it's just kind of frustrating for the other players as well. Because if you put time aside for playing a match in a tournament, and then one person doesn't show up or two people don't show up, it can be incredibly frustrating. It can lead to that particular player having a bad taste in their mouth for future tournaments or for future online events, and that is definitely not what Undead Trials is about. It's not what this community in general is about. So hopefully moving forward, like I said, we'll have a more dedicated turnout from round one on. And that's, just to be clear, that is not saying that the competitors that did take part and go all the way to the finish weren't dedicated. I mean, the folks that signed up and then didn't show, or the folks that signed up and then didn't notify Blaise or their refs about the fact that the interest had waned or something else had come up or something along those lines.
Definitely, because basically once we got to round 3, from round 3 on, it was very stiff competition, and I think from round 3 on, like round 3 started on Thursday, I think once round 3 started, we only had maybe 3 people not show up to a match the whole time, and all 3 of them were like, they had personal issues going on at the time, so, basically from round 3 on, it was pretty good. Just because we were doing a double elimination, we had to give people, their due time to actually jump in if they wanted to, because we did have a couple cases where someone completely ghosted round 1, but they actually showed up for round 2. So I wanted to at least be fair and give people the chance to show up, and it did actually happen with a couple people. Like Madroop, for example, he missed his first round 1 game. He forgot about the tournament, and then he showed up to round 2, and he actually won in round 2, and he made it to round 3. So that did happen in a couple cases.
Well, I will say that you are a better man than I then, because I would have been pissed.
Well, I tried not to get that way, but...
And that's why you were in charge.
I guess so, yeah. But we did have a couple other games we didn't talk about yet. We did mention Finders, Keepers, and Scavenger Hunt. So do you want to talk about kind of the difference between these games?
Sorry, just had a sip of tea. You're going to have to kick it off. I'm having a coughing fit. Sorry.
All right. So yeah, basically Finders, Keepers is a searching game, and Scavenger Hunt is also a searching game. The difference between them is Scavenger Hunt asks the players to find a list of items, where Finders Keepers asks the players to find one item, but find the most of it. So, for example, a classic Finders Keepers game would be find me some food rucksacks, and then basically the person that finds the most food rucksacks, they win. A Scavenger classic game would be, okay, I want you to find me a meds rucksack, I want you to find me a bandage, find me a snack, and find me a stack of ammo, or something like that. And then basically the one that finds all those items first, they win that game. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Exactly. And again, sorry about that. Just the cough is still sticking around a little bit. And I will say that, I enjoyed them both. What I enjoyed the most was finding the entire list of things, and having to find, one gun of one type, and then a med kit, and then a rucksack of parts or whatever. I enjoyed that a lot, because that meant that it was you used some of your map knowledge, in a more extensive way than in Finders Keepers, where if you knew you had to get a medical supply, you would go to one of the pharmacies, you would go to the hospital, you would go to someplace like that. If you knew you needed parts, you would go to a warehouse or a farmer supply, something like that. Whereas where you're just trying to get as many parts as you possibly can, what I kind of saw and what I kind of thought was going to happen with that was that you would search where you thought, and then you'd look at the map and be like, oh, that's right, there's that water pump down there that Sarkoth is in, and I'm gonna go down there, and oh, wait a minute, there's that warehouse over there that Blaise is in. I'm gonna hit that one up, because that's probably a good spot too. And I think that it was more limited in terms of like where you needed to go and where you really wanted to focus. Whereas if you have, 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 items that you're supposed to gather up, you're going to be hit in as many places as you possibly can.
No, absolutely. And one of the things we didn't mention about these games yet that I think made them a little bit more challenging and a lot more fun is that basically the referee was always the host, and they would use the tethering ring to their advantage. So basically the ref would kind of be walking along the road, or some refs I think drove. I know when I did it, I always walked because I wanted to kind of slow it down for players, but basically the ref would be moving along a road or something, and you'd have to keep up with that ref, because if you didn't keep up with them, you were going to get tethered.
Yeah, for my first match where Sarkoth was the ref, he actually gave us all trucks. So he gave us all the same car, and he was in a car as well, and he would say, okay, 3 minutes until we're moving to this zone, and mark it on the map. And that way we knew that we had to either start moving in that direction or hop on our truck and move over there ourselves. So it was a lot of fun. Like, there was a lot of movement around the map in that one, where we had to both stay within the tether and try and keep our trucks nearby in order to use them, to our advantage, and be able to move around the map in an effective manner.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I probably like Finders Keepers better, because I know you're talking about you like to find the list, but I think it's kind of a little bit biased because my round 1 game was so fun that I think that's why I like it a little better. Because round 1, I had a game of Finders Keepers, and Sizzle was the ref, and he asked us in the round 1 of the game to find food rucksacks, and I was facing Brad's Burgers and Radiation were the players I was facing. Basically, Brad found like 2 food rucksacks right off, and then Radiation and I were finding none the whole game. We were just looking everywhere. We weren't finding any. We were having bad luck. And then Radiation actually found a couple, and I was, kind of sweating, and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm going to, lost the first game of the tournament. Like, oh, man, this is bad. This is going so bad. I eventually found one. By the time I found one, they were still at 2, so I'm like, oh, dang, this is not good. And then the final 5 minutes of that round, I actually found a food rucksack, and I brought it to Sizzle. But what I didn't let them know at the time is that in that same house, I found a second food rucksack. So I hurried up and I went back and got that one. And then I brought that one to Sizzle with like less than a minute left. And I actually took the lead, which means I didn't have to play in the kind of tiebreaker game. So I was automatically making round 2.
Nice.
And then round 2 was kind of the same thing. Basically, I was facing Brad, and I was I think he jumped up to a lead of 2-1. I tied it 2-2. And then the final minute, I brought back a rucksack. And then the final 10 seconds, Brad brought back a rucksack. So it was tied up. We had to go to a tiebreaker, and I won the tiebreaker. So just the intensity of that first match, I think that's why I like Finders Keepers so much, because I kind of recall that first match and how much fun I had, and that's probably why I like it.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
But yeah, honestly, all the games were pretty great. I mean, Scavenger Hunt is cool too, and I know Sarkoth and I think Sizzle did this a little bit too towards some of the later matches where it got down to the last elite couple of players. They kind of combine these games a little bit, where there's tiebreakers, and okay, you have to find the championship, for example. We had a tiebreaker could be if you have more of this item than somebody else, then you might actually get the win over them. Mm-hmm. So they kind of combine those.
And one really quick thing about this is that because the competitors were joining into the host's game, it ensured that host bias did not take effect. So any host of a State of Decay game will always, or I think 99% of the time, will have more loot in a given building than anyone else. Player 2, 3, and 4 have a chance at, between 0 and 5 loot locations, but player 1 will basically be guaranteed to have loot in every single building and every single location on the map. The reason that the ref is the host is to eliminate that bias, is to make sure that when everyone else joins, they're all kind of on the same playing field in terms of number of loot items in a given location. Whereas if one of the players was the host, that would give them a definitive advantage, both in tether, because it would mean that they would be able to limit where their opponents could go, and in just general loot availability. So I just thought that it was important to kind of point that out in order to just kind of demonstrate the amount of thought that went into this to ensure that there was a balance between the additional 3 players when trying to look for loot or trying to look for ferals or trying to look for, juggernauts or whatever.
Absolutely. And kind of bouncing off that too, we started to realize very early on that it was definitely more beneficial to have a fresh map for these games. So most of the refs would go to a new map before they start one of these games, because if they know they're doing a searching game, they wanted to give everyone a fair chance at a map, because sometimes refs, and not really their fault exactly, because they might not have known this already, will make it more of a point in the next tournament. But in the next turn, we're going to make it a point that it has to be a fresh map for any searching game, because if it's a fresh map, you're going to have more chances at loot, where in some of these games, the players didn't really have a lot of loot to search for.
Right, and I mean, that makes sense. The refs in general are going to be playing communities that they've already played before. They're going to be playing their, number 2 community or number 3 community for the most part. And those maps, they're going to be used. They're going to be found. You're going to have a general map already laid out where where play carts are or were, where buildings are or have been looted. And the thing about that kind of issue is when you load up a map, like if you load into a map as a player 2 or player 3 or player 4, and the majority of the map is already exposed, you can actually see as player 2 what buildings don't have loot for you. So it gives you that little bit of knowledge, and it gives you that little bit of information of, okay, well, there's no point in even going over here. It's unlikely that happens on a large scale, but when you're not using a fresh map, that's something else that can happen, and that's something else that happened in these games as well. So I think that
Right.
it's a really good call out moving forward to ensure that, we're using fresh maps on every single round, and just kind of putting that out there from the start.
No, I agree for sure. And, before we move on from talking about scavenger hunt and finders keepers, we can't move on from that without talking about your one loss the whole tournament. So do you want to get into that game? Yeah, this was actually on Friday. You were facing Screw Loose, and you're facing Harsh Not Royal. And basically, this was make or break for Harsh. If he lost and he was out, you and Screw Loose hadn't lost yet. And this was the biggest upset of the entire tournament. There's no bigger upset. Basically, Harsh took out both of you and gave you your first loss. And
oh man, I'm getting really thirsty. Let me just get some drink here, and we can pick this up in a couple of minutes. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got revenge on him, so I'll say that before we move on. You did get revenge, so.
No, I mean, to be completely fair, I mean, the game was amazing. And it literally came down to a tenth of a point, between me and Harsh. It was insane. We both had an incredible amount of luck and then an incredible amount of bad luck, where, we went on tears where we were just turning in stacks and stacks of stuff. And then towards the end of the game, we couldn't find anything. Like we were looting houses, we were looting factories, we were looting electrical substations, we were looting police stations and cars and everything, and just nothing was dropping for either one of us. And I remember vividly when it happened. When I walked away, I knew where Sarkoth was going to go next, so I got there ahead of Royal. And as I walked away, an enclave spawned in for Royal, and he ended up getting one piece of I think 5 that he needed in order to turn in for the very end for the score, and it was 1 firecracker. And that one firecracker turned out to be the win for him. It gave him the points needed, because he had 3 out of 5, which was 60% of that stack. And I ended up having, I think,
like 45%, right?
45%.
7 out of 14.
Yeah, 7 out of 14 or 7 out of 15, I think.
Yeah.
7 out of 15. And so if that one firecracker hadn't been there, if that one enclave hadn't spawned in, that's the difference in the tournament. That puts him down to 40%, me at 45, and that's a win, and Harsh is out of the tournament. And, I mean, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy that game came down to that small of of an event like that tiny thing. And that's kind of
Absolutely.
how that game works. It's, well, what if I looted that one house? I ran past there. There was one item left in there. What if I'd searched that one? And there's a lot of second guessing afterwards. If you're like me and you think about everything.
I definitely am. And we'll get into my game I second guess after, because we haven't talked about time trials yet. But when we get to that, we'll talk about my game where I second guess myself. I know in round one of that, though, I actually missed pretty much all of round one because I think I was like taking a 1 hour nap or something like that. And basically, Sarkoth, I know he was saying afterwards that Screwloose was actually in the lead at one point, but then you came back from behind. Was that true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was out. I was out. I didn't stand a chance in that one. I was going to be out in the first part of that game because how it worked was we needed to put, I think, 5 rucksacks or 4 rucksacks into our truck before we could move on and start gathering other pieces of items. Before we could gather guns and parts and the explosives and all the other stuff that Sarkoth had rolled up on his wheel of pain. And I couldn't find any. Literally, like I could not find a single rucksack. I had Sarkoth move 3 times, like up and down the main road, in order to open up more buildings because I had looted literally every single item across that entire section of the map and hadn't found a single ruck. And so, the other guys are, they're done with their rucks, they're getting their items, they're turning stuff in. I'm just sitting here going, oh man, what a pain. I'm Undead Trials 1 champion. I'm going to get knocked out this quickly. And it was the same kind of thing that you went through, where it just kind of turned around. And once I got exactly, and once I got the rucksacks, or once I started getting the rucksacks, at that point, because I had already known the items that I needed, I'd filled my backpack. So I walked up to Sarkoth and said, "Here's number 5. Also, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this." And it came down to I finished 5 of the 6 items, I think, in 2 minutes. And then all I needed was a couple of crossbow bolts, and that was it. And it was an epic turnaround that was reliant entirely upon, my finding that last rucksack. And if I hadn't found it, I mean, that's it. Like, I'm not moving on, or I'm not, getting that win, and the entire story is different. So it was crazy. Like, it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and kind of like you talked about, that's exactly how I felt in round 1 too. I mean, because round 1 is like, oh man, I can't lose round 1. Like, this is round 1 of the tournament. This is the first day. Like, I can't lose this. And I was behind like the whole game. And in the last 5 minutes, I turned it around. So it's kind of the same story as you.
Exactly. And that was throughout the entire tournament. There was stuff like that. And it was amazing. Like, going back to kind of Scarproof, like, he lost round 1 by 3 seconds, and then he came back and started winning. So it was fun. The entire competition was amazing.
Yeah, and there were some close games like that the whole time, because I think there were some times too, I'm trying to remember the game, but I think it was a game that a small hedge was in that he won, where he was in a scavenger hunt game and he kind of played it differently. I think he was against
Or thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I'm thinking of the game against Han Solo Dolo in 10 meter.
Oh, okay.
Because I think he was behind in that game, and he actually had the strategy of kind of playing it coy, because the whole game he was behind, and basically Han Solo Dolo, he actually had 2 more rucksacks he hadn't turned in, but he was so far ahead that I think it kind of got to his head, like, oh, I have nothing to worry about, and then right at like the last minute, a small hedge comes in, he turns in all of his stuff at once, and then he's automatically tied. And
brutal.
I think Han didn't really think of that, because then afterwards Han's like, well, I have 2 more, and I think I guess Harsh was actually the referee for that one, but I guess it's like, well, you didn't turn him in time, so I guess sorry.
Right. That's brutal.
So yeah, basically, Han lost the tiebreaker.
Brutal. But that also brings up another thing that was, some of the refs that were involved in this were competitors to start with, and they stepped up when, those gaps in that call went out. The bat signal went in the air, and the call went out of, are there people out there that are involved in the game that would like to ref or be interested in reffing? And I think that, to the credit of the community and to the credit of those that were taking part, I mean, I think that everyone that refed did an amazing job. Like, people really put their heart and soul into this, and put their communities into this as well. Fully sacrificing community health and community happiness within the game,
definitely,
in order to ensure that people had fun. I mean, there were games that I was seeing where the host or the ref had set up 30 cars for people to choose from, and that is a giant pain in the butt. Like, that is significant time and effort put into planning a game that's going to last for an hour. So my hat goes off to everyone that stepped up and refed, and yourself and everyone else who refed in this, because it was, like I said, it was a significant time commitment that went into it, and I'm proud of everyone that did that and that took the time to help make this a success.
No, and so am I. And I definitely appreciate everyone who helped out. I mean, kind of like you said, like at one point, I remember I was talking. I think it was like on a Friday or Saturday when the tournament was almost over, but I was talking to Sizzle. I'm like, yeah, my community morale's at negative 27 right now, because like I was so busy setting up games that I didn't have any time to focus on my community at all. So like I was switching maps all the time. Like I had nothing built at base. Like, so my community like hated me. So
yep,
it was kind of funny.
And that was kind of the story across the entire tournament was, the people that were setting these games up had run out of parts. They'd run out of weapons. They'd run out of cars. They'd run out of all this stuff, and
even in the championships, Sizzle ran out of influence.
Exactly.
So.
He ran out of influence, so we couldn't call in cars anymore. It's just, like I said, it just goes to show the kind of the effort and the love that this community has for this game, that, the people that weren't necessarily directly involved in the coordination of Undead Trials 2 were willing to sacrifice a lot of, their loot and their real life gaming time, to give a good experience to the people that were involved, or that were still in the tournament or hadn't been knocked out in some cases. Some of the refs had been knocked out of the tournament prior to that point, and they still stuck around and they still helped, and they refed games and kind of went above and beyond, and dropping off repair kits and all these other things that people did. That was just amazing. It was just amazing.
Absolutely. And it goes without saying too that some of these refs, I think Andy, for example, he might even ref more games than Sizzle and I did. So, like, Andy ref a lot of games, which we really appreciate, too, So, thank you, Andy, for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, and some of the most kind of innovative stuff came from people that weren't, necessarily original designers of Undead Trials. Sarkoth with his Wheel of Pain, for example.
Exactly. And kind of one of the ones I was going to get into next, which is a good segue, is Morris actually reinvented time trials racing, because the way time trials racing was originally designed to go is you do a lap around, the ref kind of sets a course and you do laps around that course, but you get a full tank of gas to start. But after that full tank of gas runs out, you have to find gas somewhere in the world and keep going on your lap. So basically, the longer the lap was, like in round 2, when it's 1 versus 1, the laps were longer. So your laps would kind of go longer and you had to find more gas. So you had to do like 5 laps or 3 laps of this course and kind of do it faster than your opponents. Well, Morris was actually inventive, and he created this whole other component to it where in the original version, people were allowed to harass each other. Like, you throw firecrackers and things like that to draw more zombies. That way, when somebody stops for gas, they can kind of, have more zombies around them. They can be distracted a little more. Morris actually took it to a whole new level, and he made a smaller racing track. But the difference is, in his smaller racing track, he actually allowed what he called coyotes to, go after the person that was racing and actually hit their car, do damage to their car. And it made it a lot more interesting that way, because it was a smaller track, so you didn't have to worry about the refueling aspect as much, but you had to worry about people hitting you, knocking you off course. So people could set traps for each other and things like that. So I actually played that game a couple times, and it's actually a really fun version. So, we definitely appreciate people like that were innovative. Morris did some innovations there. Sarkoth did a lot of innovations. Andy did some innovations with Demolition Derby, which we'll talk about next. But, Time Trials Racing, I think, was really innovative to a new level.
I agree. And I think that, both aspects or both style of game have their positive sides too, because in the finals we had a general time trial where we raced around the entire map. And I really enjoyed it. it was a lot of fun, and it really kind of focused on the driving aspect and how good you were in terms of knowing the map and making the turns and kind of just, standard time trial stuff. But in the kind of combative time trial Coyote version, it ensures that everyone is involved in the entire time and kind of gives your opponents a better chance to really negatively impact your score and your ability to complete that challenge. So I think that they both have definite merit for, Undead Trials 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10.
Absolutely. And kind of one of the things I'm going to look into, with Sizzle and other people is some of these new versions, like say Maris's, Coyote version, like Roadrunner Coyote version, and maybe like Sarkov's version of I Can. Like I might actually make these just full games by themselves and keep like, okay, you can either play original I Can or you can play new version of I Can. You can play original time trials or you can play the new version of time trials. And I think they might serve well as their own games. That way the original is still stay intact. We also have the new versions too.
I agree completely. And I think that, it's something else that you can look into, moving forward, and something else that can be looked into for, having or allowing the individual competitors to make that decision or to have input into the decision around kind of the games that might be played. But that's a completely another discussion for, future days.
Definitely. No, and that's kind of one of the things too. I mean, we're definitely looking for more people to help out next time because we did have some people that were supposed to be helping out more in this, but they just had real life come up. And for example, yourself, you were supposed to ref a couple of games, but obviously you got pneumonia, so we don't blame you for that. It happens, but hopefully it doesn't happen again to anyone. But
hopefully it doesn't happen again. That would be disappointing.
But then one of our organizers, Mr. Dart, basically once round one ended, so like Monday, basically, he had to drop out of the rest for personal reasons, and we didn't have Mr. Dart for the rest of the tournament, so basically Kay Sizzle and I were doing everything on our own from Tuesday on, so that was a little bit difficult. And then another one of our people that was going to ref more for us was Rabbit, but Rabbit had internet issues all week, so we kind of lost some key cogs that we were planning on, but it just kind of goes to show how great the community is, like you were saying, because we have people step up that before this tournament, we didn't really know as well. Like, for example, I Kill You, he stepped up a lot. Andy stepped up a lot. We had people stepping up, like even Death Crow covering a game on short notice. Harsh covered one game on short notice. So we had people stepping up like these people that they weren't really planned to step up as much as they had to, but when the time arose, they actually stepped up and helped. So we really appreciate that. And it just kind of goes to show that, next time we're going to have these people that stepped up this time we didn't expect. And then hopefully, next time we'd have people like Mr. Dart, yourself, and Rabbit actually able to help out, so we'd have a lot more covered.
Exactly, and that'll let you have more than, 12 hours of sleep in a week.
Yes, hopefully.
If you want to.
Well, because one of the things in Undead Trials 3 that I definitely want is I don't want to have to ref a lot of as many games as I did myself, because I love reffing the games, but I do feel that as an organizer, I kind of want to be there to watch the games and kind of provide guidance or, handle issues as they arise, because there's a couple times during the tournament that issues were coming up, but I was also the scheduled ref for the next game. So it's like, well, I have to ref, but I also have to, do the organizer stuff. So like, it was kind of a pickle that I was in. So I'm hoping that I don't have to get into that pickle as much next time.
Well, you handled it like a champ. So I would say that, if those things did come up, or if those events did come up, I, for one, didn't really notice them. It wasn't something that came across as something that was incredibly invasive or problematic from a participant standpoint, from my side anyway. So, well done.
Well, thank you. I mean, I know the I Can game you did against Sarkoth and Andy, like, that was one of the times we had an issue, really, because something came up with Sizzle. He was supposed to ref the other game that was happening at the same time, but unfortunately, he had some issues come up where he couldn't do it. And it just so happened that in my last game before that game, Harsh was one of the competitors. He was still in the party chat with me. He's like, well, I can ref it if you want. And, so Harsh stepped up at a couple seconds notice, and he refed that game for us.
Exactly. And Harsh is a good guy. a crazy hard competitor. He was freaking awesome. I'm glad he took part.
Absolutely, and he made the semifinals, and
Oh yeah,
making
he
the
almost kicked my
semifinals is
butt.
huge. Yes,
He did kick my butt.
he did. But we do have one other game we didn't talk about yet, and that's Demolition Derby. And this was kind of, I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this as well, but I noticed a lot of the refs that kept reffing, they kind of had like their signature game. Morris had his like Coyote Time Trials Racing. My signature was kind of like I Can. It seemed like Sizzle liked to do a lot of Finders Keepers or like scavenger hunt stuff. And then Andy's kind of signature game was Demolition Derbies. And
Oh yeah.
you actually got to participate in one of those. So
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. And this was a demo derby, and it's on my channel. I'm sure it's on Andy's as well. Where we actually had an early start. We started playing through. We had some rules clarifications that we needed to go through, because we started off with being allowed to get out of the car and kind of throw small explosives at each other. So if Andy and Harsh were going at it and were slamming into each other, I could hop out and throw a Molotov or something along those lines. And unfortunately, that kind of led to other completely legal tactics that didn't fit with kind of what we were going for a demo derby. So we rebuilt all the cars, restarted, and went back in, and we were in the quarry area, and the three of us just crashed the absolute crap out of each other's cars. It was amazing. And there were points where the physics would take over, and head-to-head smashes
Yes,
would send a car up over a building, that kind of stuff. And it was a clip fest is what I like to call it, because there was one point where after Harsh had been knocked out, he was given permission to kind of shell into the play space, and he hit me with a random explosion as I rammed into Andy, and Screw, and ended up flying all the way over the top of the factory and landing on the other side of the factory. So it was a crazy event. It came down to the wire, actually, where Screw actually ran out of gas as I was kind of hitting him into oblivion. And I had my last car left, and it wasn't smoking. I still had some gas left. And we called it at that point because he just, he had no more functional vehicles, and I did. But it came down to it. Like, it came down to the wire. And it was crazy. Like, the selection of cars mattered. Screw and I had heavier cars in general, but Harsh used his maneuverability better, made us crash into rocks. So, like, we would be chasing him, or I'd be chasing him around behind the factory, and there's one little ramp that if you have a light enough car, you can ride up the side of the mountain and kind of get behind the factory. And he would use that to get away from me and Screw. And then we would be stuck in this little zone. We'd be like, oh God, he got away. Let's just beat on each other again. And he'd just be sitting up there giggling in his tiny little clown car. And it
yeah, I know that kind of upset Screw Loose a little bit, because I was kind of watching, and honestly, like, in his defense, like, that's kind of the tactic Harsh had to take, because that's the cars he was dealt. Like, he didn't have a lot of big cars. He had to use, his maneuverability. So
Exactly.
I kind of understand why he was doing that a little bit.
Exactly. And it worked. I mean, it frustrated me. It frustrated Screw, and we took it out on each other. Now, to Harsh's detriment, when he did return to the fray, he had two very large trucks that were very upset with him and wanted to talk to him about some things. And, we may have spoken a little harshly when we got him stuck in a corner and just started slamming into him over and over and over again. But, he, again, was able to rabbit out of that, get away, make us hit each other more. So I think that, he played the hand that he was dealt incredibly well. And he played it as, the quick antagonist. He was the one zipping around. He was the one making us waste our fuel going after him when we, in our minds, we should have known we couldn't catch him. Should have just been like, all right, well, eventually he has to come to us. Like that's the game type. He has to come over here, and we're going to pound him into the ground when he does. In the meantime, let's just destroy each other. But that's not what we did, and we wasted a ton of fuel and a ton of kind of, car hit points, as it were, ramming into each other and ramming into, the terrain itself, and wrecked cars and getting hit by random explosives and stuff like that, and zombies and all that. So, I mean, he played it about as well as he possibly could, given the cars that he had drafted. And just to be clear for those of you that are listening and didn't watch the match, how it worked was we basically chose lots to make it easy, and the first person to choose the correct lot got to pick their set of cars. And I went second. I picked another set, and Harsh, I believe, went third and picked, was quote unquote stuck with his cars, and he had one heavy and two lights, whereas I had two mediums and one heavy. And that is basically what Screw had as well. He had one heavy and two mediums. So
yeah, and I'm kind of curious to hear your take on this too, because I wrote up for the final 8 players that were in the semifinals on the Discord. I kind of wrote up like small little stories about how they got there, and one of the things I wrote with Royal's strategy, or Royal's like story basically, is that one of the things I noticed when looking at his schedule. Up to that game, he'd only ever played Scavenger Hunt or Finders Keepers games. He'd only ever played searching games. So, do you think that actually played into, him not doing as well in this game? Because he had never had experience with any other game.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I think that he played it, like I said, he played it incredibly well, given the vehicles that he had. Like, he knew that he couldn't take us head on. And he tried. He started off, when we first started, he took a couple of huge, just physics-defying hits where he would just go tumbling, and took a lot of damage from, staying in the mix with 2 much larger vehicles. So, once that started to happen, he adjusted perfectly. He adjusted perfectly to deal with the competition that he had and what we had chosen for our starting cars and all that stuff. And when, the first 2 cars were out of commission, he went to his medium vehicle and came out and like rumbled a little bit more. And once that went down, he was, down to a lighter vehicle again. And he went back to being the rabbit. He went back to being chased. So I think that, I don't know that I would have played it any differently had I been in his shoes. What I might have done, the only thing that I can think of is try and bait the other cars into kind of hitting more environmental hazards, and try and bait them into running into like zombie hazards, because I know we had a Juggernaut spawn in or like wander onto the battlefield. We had a Feral wander onto the battlefield. So like try and get those guys involved in order to kind of swing the balance in my favor. Whereas, maintaining that, the rabbit aspect of trying to avoid conflict eventually did get him stuck, because, both myself and Screw were finally just kind of like, okay, we got to deal with this, because he's nibbling away at our flanks while we're trying to wail on each other. And his last car went boom, and it went boom big. But even then, to his credit, he stayed in that car a lot longer than I would have. He chased down Screw, and I want to say did significant damage to the car that Screw was in just by hitting him with the car right before it exploded and bailing out. Yep. So, like, I honestly have to applaud him, especially knowing that he didn't play any kind of racing games or time trials based games before this point, simply because, he adjusted incredibly well to the hand that he was given. And, once we got into the main game of Demo Derby, he played it as well as he could. And he played it in a way that kept him alive for a significant amount of time. And eventually just, he ran out of luck and he got hit hard a couple times, and that was it.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you talk about that too, because during that match, Sarkoth and I were actually in a chat, and during the whole match, we were watching it and kind of, debating the strategy back and forth, because there were certain points that we thought Screwloose might be in the lead based on damage, and there's certain points we thought you might be in the lead, but we could always see that Harsh Knight Royal was in last for the whole match, and we did think that in his perspective, he should be, hitting you guys much less than he did, because, for example, when he was down to his last car, like, if I'm down to my last car and neither one of you guys have lost a car yet, I am not going to be engaging you guys at all. Like, I'm going to be zipping by you guys, making you guys crash into each other, but I would not be taking any hits at all.
Exactly. I would just be like, I'd be on the field, but I would rely on the fact that I can get away and just kind of taunt.
Right.
You sit between you sit between the cargo crates because you can fit in
I
there.
thought he misplayed that a little bit, but it seemed like he tried to do the best he could with it.
Exactly. And I think that, that's a couple things. That's a length of the game. We had been playing for a good hour at that point, I think. And that's a long time to focus on controlling your car and making the best choices that you can in terms of, not taking unnecessary damage. And for him, especially considering the fact that he wasn't involved in like the big hits and the big chases and stuff like that, he was on the receiving end a good amount. But he wasn't like the one that was really dishing it out as often as myself and Screw were. That can wear on you too, because you don't. Sometimes you want to be King Hippo and you don't want to be Little Mac, and I think that that's what it came down to. Is he got into that mindset of, well, I want to be King Hippo. I want to run him over for a little bit.
Right.
And he did. He hit me a couple times where, despite the fact that, in real life, my truck would have, pancaked him. He hit me in such a way that I went flying backwards and put me in real risk of, an inadvertent explode just from rolling over onto the rocks and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, there were aspects of it that could be changed, but it all wears down on you after a while. You just want that hit, you want that satisfying, you want the, where's the ground shaking kaboom, that kind of thing. Like you've been playing this and you just, I want to watch him fly. Let's hit him hard and watch him fly. And I think, after an hour of off again, on again, demo derby, like that's the kind of thing that can wear on you. And so I think that maybe, that might be my only criticism, is maybe he fell into that trap. But overall, I mean, 99% of the time, his tactics in that match were spot on. He was
at the end of the day, I mean, this is all going to be stuff that he can use for Undead Trials 3, because he has already said he wants to come back. So if he comes back, he's already going to have this experience in Demo Derby that he can use that next time.
Exactly. And that's another thing. Like that's, now that we know kind of what some of the games are, you can train yourself too. Like in your game, you're playing by yourself and you're like, okay, well, now I know that we're playing Demo Derby. Maybe I start fishtailing a little more. Maybe I start swinging the tail of the truck around in order to get that hit on the Juggernaut, or to get the hit on that Feral. And doing that kind of thing in game trains you. And I know it's really kind of silly to say, but it trains you to be able to, react to the situation in a tournament where, a giant truck is coming at you at full speed and you don't want to take that hit head on. Like if you can take that hit on your tail, that's way better for you and way worse for them. And if you can, fishtail your back end into the front of their truck, like that's going to be beneficial in the long run.
Or even better yet, if you can move out of the way and let them hit the rocks.
Exactly.
That's even better.
Exactly.
But the only thing, I know you definitely did walk away with that with the win, and you actually made the championship. But the one thing that I will say that Sarkoth and I were debating during the match is that during that match, it did look at certain points like Screwloose might be in the lead, and we were kind of questioning how much you actually were going after Royal, because it seemed like in your position, it wasn't smart to go after him, because Screwloose actually had a big boss that was, giving you a lot of trouble for most of the match, and basically it didn't stop giving you trouble until it ran out of gas. But essentially what we were thinking is that you should be trying to team up with Royal to go after that big boss, but instead you're going after him. So you want to talk about some of your strategy with that?
Yeah, sure. My strategy at that point in the match, I still had my repair kit and I still had my gas can, and I hadn't grabbed my largest, heaviest car yet. So in my mind, I knew that Screw had already used his gas. He'd already repaired the big boss. which meant that the amount of damage that it could do at that point was limited by the amount of gas that it had left. And by avoiding him and by going after Screw, I was actually saving my car for his future vehicles. Because the big boss it's the big boss. Like, you're not, unless you're teaming up on him, it's not going to go down easy, and it's going to take a ton of damage. It's with the giant plow in the front, it's going to mitigate everything that you do to the front end, and he just has the ability to just, plow you. Yeah, he'll just hit you, and you'll go flying. There's nothing you can do. So, considering that, that the plow and the fact that it's the big boss means that even if I fishtail my rear end into him, it's not going to do any damage, or it's not going to, the damage is going to be negligible. He wasn't going to hop out of that thing and switch to another car. So the only real tactic that I had, since, Royal and I, Harsh and I were not going to work together to take him out. It's just, it's not how the match was working. It's not how we were working together. So in my mind, I just said, okay, so I got to run his butt all over the place and make him run out of gas. I need to make him travel as far as I possibly can, as often as I can, in order to get this thing out of.
So it sounds kind of like you were trying to win a war of attrition, knowing he'd run out of gas at some point, right?
Oh yeah. It was completely a war of attrition, because the car that I had wasn't going to take that heads on. It's not, and I'm not going to beat my head against the wall trying to take it down. I'd rather go around the wall. And that's kind of what I was doing in that case, was trying to avoid him as much as possible, trying to avoid that, that big hit, and the instantaneous kaboom, and deal with, the smaller competitor that's still nibbling at me and still doing damage. And make him use his resources, which he did. He used all of his resources to keep that thing up, which is, deservedly so, because it is it's a beast. But
absolutely,
that was the plan, and the plan was to keep the van in reserve until the last moment, when I would still have the ability to lay out the big hits, because at that point, the van is the biggest guy on the field. And as long as I still have that repair kit and the gas can, I could take out 2 of his cars with the van by itself. So all I had to do was maintain the upper hand and make sure that I didn't lose, my other 2 cars, taking out the big boss for the second time, because we had already taken him down. Big boss was smoking. It was black smoking, if I remember correctly, and we just lost track of him. And he was able to get away and fix that thing up, which was, obviously a tactical mistake on my part to let him do that in the first place. I should have just hounded his butt and just kept ramming him. But
yes.
Eventually, but even that's not going to work forever, because, he'll drive another car back there and he'll fix it. I can't hound him continually throughout the entire game, because that's just, A, it's not the way that I play, and B, it's, it's not really fair to him or to Harsh to ignore Harsh entirely just to take on Screw. So I felt, in the moment, and even thinking back on it, that really the best plan was to kind of go with what I was doing, which was, give Screw a couple of big hits, do the head on every now and then to keep his interest. And then other than that, avoid, go after Harsh and make him run out of gas.
No, it definitely makes sense. It sounds a lot of like what I tried to do in my Demolition Derby game too, because in mine I had the Wichita ES, which that was, believe it or not, that was like the fastest and most maneuverable car that Andy allowed for choices. So
nice.
That's why I picked that one, because. And then what I did is I actually hit it, because in that version, Andy allowed us to, put our cars wherever we wanted before the match started. So I kind of hit it in some bushes in a little wooded area, and I kind of left it there the whole match. And
look at you, you tricky guy.
Yeah, well, they eventually did find it, but it was Manicore and LDIR that I was facing. But basically my strategy with that was to leave that card there the whole match and never touch it, kind of like what we did with Bandito, because my thinking was, I'll just use the 2 cars I have, because we all got 1 Bandito, and we all got, 2 other cars besides that, and I'm like, I'll use the other 2 cars I have, and I'll kind of use those to get the upper hand, and then if I really need it at the very end of the match, I'm going to have that Wichita waiting for me, and I will absolutely be the most maneuverable person in the field. So if push comes to shove, I'm going to have the most maneuverable car at the end of the game. And that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I mean that's definitely. I mean, so you actually did kind of the reverse Harsh. You were planning on doing the keep away move at the very end, whereas Harsh kind of smattered it in the start and the end. He had the tiny car to start with, and then he went to his one medium to kind of mix it up and beat on us, and then went back to the small car to kind of taunt us and drive around and make us lose gas. So, I mean, it's very similar in terms of the overall tactic that you were both going for the fast car, for the fast small car, I should say. And I think that, it goes to show that it's a viable option. You just need to keep taunting your opponent and get them pissed off so they don't focus on what you're doing.
Right. Just the difference with that match, though, is Andy actually had to start out to where how your match started out, where you could actually get out of your car and throw bombs and stuff, and that wasn't placed for the whole match. So at the end of the match, it basically came down to eventually sudden death, where it was me versus Manicore, and at the end of the match, we basically were both out of our cars, just slinging some bombs at the end of the game, and I beat him by a couple seconds with that. So.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of led into the start of our match where, we were driving around, and then we looked over and Harsh was just standing outside of his car. He wasn't even in his car, just chucking grenades at our cars, and we were both, Screw and I were both kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is demo derby. This isn't stand outside and destroy other people's cars, because there's no way to mitigate that. Like, you can't kill the other player. So it was just one of those things in our match that didn't really sit well for myself or for Screw. So we just needed to kind of pause the game and just say, all right, let's all meet up. Let's talk about this. Let's figure out what we want to do here, because it doesn't seem like, it fits in the expected rule set for something like.
And I definitely understand that. Just at the time with our game, that was the rules we had in place, and we kind of just went with it because that's the rules that were in place. So, like, we all were, fine with playing it out the way it was played out, and we just played it out that way. So, I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying. It's not like classic Demolition Derby, but that was kind of the rule set we were given. So, like, we were like, all right, well, let's play it out this way. And I actually got off to a disadvantage for a while, but I ended up, coming up with a strategy to come back into it, and basically I made it so where I could get a sudden death, and then I got a sudden death, and I won sudden death.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and it's a fun version of demo derby. I think that the problem that I ended up having with it on the map that we were on was that, I mean, there was a resupply point in the edge of the map where you could just stand there, grab grenades, and chuck them onto the field endlessly. If you had 500 grenades in your enclave or in your community, you could just stand there and literally never
I think that's
stop.
where the difference might come to play, because we didn't have that resupply point. Like, there was still an outpost like far away, but it was pretty far away because we were actually in the lake for our match, and in the lake, like, there was nothing around us that we could really resupply. Like, he allowed us to search a little bit, but as you know, around that lake, there's not really a lot to search. Like, there's that one refueling station, that's about it. So we could search if we wanted to, but it was basically, if you're going to get chuck bombs, you basically had to come with what you had on you, and that's pretty much it.
Right, and that, I think, is kind of a good limitation on that game type, and I think that's something that should be reviewed for Undead Trials 3 through 10, 15, whatever, because I think that it does give that little extra, oomph to a demolition derby where, those guys are fighting together. Let's hop out and hit them with some bloater gas, or something equally nasty. And it does make you keep an eye on all three competitors, because, that third person could be doing something super sneaky. And as long as you're all kind of working with the same stuff, then it's not a big deal.
Yeah. And what it actually came down to is basically I had a better bomb type than Manicore had, because I guess, I don't know if he just didn't think of this bomb or what, but I was using field bombs at the end, and that's how I beat him by a couple seconds, because my field bombs exploded and set his car on fire. So, my field bombs did better than his. Like, he was using, like, firecrackers and grenades and stuff. I'm like, that's not going to work as well in the water. I'm like, I'm just going to use the field bombs and set you on fire.
Nice.
Kind of like you were saying with sneakiness, too. That's kind of how we got to sudden death, because I thought I had 2 cars left at the end of the match, and then he blew up one of mine, and I blew up one of his, and I thought I had 1 car left, but it turns out that, I guess at some point in the match, my Wichita ES that I had, like, hiding in the corner, I guess he walked over that and, like, just blew that up on foot, but I didn't never know that. The ref didn't never know that. Like Andy was the ref, like, and Andy kind of ruled, well, I mean, if I didn't even know about that, like that's not really fair. So that's why he made sudden death, because Manicore never made it known that like anyone ever blew that up, because like you have to know if your card's blown up, because I was making the point like my entire strategy changes if I know that card's blown up. So I mean, so that's why we went sudden death.
Yeah, makes sense. So
Manicore's like, oh yeah, sorry, I probably should have said something. My bad.
No, yeah, and I think that also comes to the kind of fleshing out the rules for future Undead Trials is, do you have to tell someone if you're using explosives, if you are in a Demolition Derby explosives game, do you have to tell everyone?
Right.
And can you use explosives on parked cars? And, just little stuff like that, and little stuff that, we wouldn't think of, or that you wouldn't think of in terms of kind of adjusting not even adjusting the rules, like you're playing within the rules. And that was kind of what I said in our match to Harsh. It was like, yeah, you're playing within the rules, but at the same time, if you're not leaving the resupply point and there's no way for us to actually hurt you, it changes how the game is going to be played, and that was what happened in our game. Is we had to, like I said, we had to sit down, we had to pause it, we had to have a chat, reset, and because of the placement of that resupply point, we had to take explosives out just because it wasn't.
Yeah, that sounds very fair to me, because like in our match we didn't take it out, and I think it makes more sense not to take it out in our version because we were at a different area. The lake, there's not really a lot of resupply points at the lake, so. But another match that I had that was actually pretty close, I know you know this one a little bit, the one I had versus Maris, that's where I got my only loss before the championship, and this is what I alluded to earlier with the Time Trials Racing. And basically this is a one-on-one match with me and Maris, because the third competitor, LDIR, he just couldn't make it. He had some personal stuff come up, so he got eliminated that way. But it was basically myself versus Maris, and along with you and Screwloose at the time, we were the only 4 players left without a loss, and we already know how you and Screwloose went, but basically I got a loss to Maris, and that's how Maris became the only player left without a loss. And my match with Maris, it was a Time Trials Racing game, where it was like sort of a Coyote versus Roadrunner rendition, but Sizzle put a twist on it where you have to get as many laps as you can get in the time that you're given. But the twist he put on it was you also have to find 25 parts during that time. So basically, if you didn't find 25 parts, then none of your laps counts. Like, say I did 100 laps. If you didn't find 125 parts in that 100 laps, then you get 0 laps. That's kind of how it works. So you had to find those parts at some point, and Maris went first. He did 6 laps, and he found his 25 parts. So I was up next, and I was trying to strategize, and basically my strategy was, okay, what I'm going to do first is get my laps done, because I know I have to at least get 6 laps to, get him. So I did my 7 laps first, which in hindsight, I should have left it at 6 laps, but I wasn't thinking at the time, because at the time I wasn't thinking, okay, if I do 6 laps and then I do it before my time ends, I can beat him in a tiebreaker. I was thinking at the time, okay, I have to do 7 laps to beat him. So in hindsight, I should have left it at 6 laps, which would have left me enough time to win. But basically my strategy was do my laps first, get that out of the way, and then search my parts, because Maris kind of searched a lot of buildings to find his parts. My strategy was, okay, I know there's this warehouse here, there's this power station here. Basically, I picked out like 2 or 3 places. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do my laps, search these 2 or 3 places, and that's going to be it. And that's basically the strategy that would have worked. I was just off by 2 seconds, because I searched my last building, and like Sizzle called time, and once he called time, there's one more container in front of me that I was about to search. Brutal. And after he called time, and we did the results, I'm like, okay, let me search this container now to see what was in here, because if I had 2 more seconds, I was going to search this. I searched it, there's 21 parts, and I would have won by 10 parts. So.
Well, and I mean, I would probably do the same thing, because, how hard is it to find 25 parts? Really? Like, exactly. You're gonna find it in like 3 buildings. It's not gonna be something that's hard. It's not that, that thing that you're gonna lie awake at night and be like, oh God, I have to find 25 parts. It's the easiest thing in the game. It's the most common thing in the game. So I would have done the exact same thing. I would have gone for the 7 laps and been like, 25 parts, whatever. Give me a minute. Give me 2 minutes tops, and I'll be fine. Right. And then you end up shooting yourself in the foot, because you're like, oh God, it's 25 parts. This isn't as easy as I thought it was. So.
it was just, it made a kind of like horrible feeling, kind of like you felt with your one loss, like, because if I would have went to that building first instead of the other building I went to first, I would have won. Or if I would have done the 6 laps, I would have won. If I would have done something else 5 seconds better, I would have won. It's like, how could I get those 2 seconds back? Like, there's anything I could have done to get those 2 seconds back, and I would have won. Like, it's just kind of hard to swallow a loss like that. It's like, oh man, 2 seconds? Like, literally anything I could have done would have won the game.
Look, if we're going to start talking about that loss again, I have to go and start drinking something heavier than tea. So,
well, maybe I talked about it too much, I guess. I don't know.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it's true, but I mean, that's true for any of the searching games. And I think that one of the things that moving forward that will need to be, adjusted or at least discussed is kind of what you need to find with the searching games. Because there is a definitive luck aspect to some of it, where if you put into play kind of a rarer item, it's not going to be something that everyone's going to find easily, and it's going to, come down to it's a little bit of luck. So I think that, moving forward, and especially into Undead Trials 3, 4, 5, we can kind of go over that and go over kind of setting. As awesome as the Wheel of Pain is, there were some things on there that, in my mind, were, it wasn't as even of a playing field as I would have liked, simply because of their inclusion. And I think that was kind of represented in a couple matches. The fact that I found a weapon that used 357 bullets and no one else did. Like, that's, that indicates to me that maybe that item shouldn't be in there. Because if we're playing for, 45 minutes and only one person finds one of those items, that's the kind of thing where the rarity becomes a detriment to the enjoyment of both the participant and the viewer. Because, there's going to be some salt in there. People are going to be a little salty when, the person that they're rooting for doesn't get that, 1% drop and someone else does. So there isn't much you can do about it, but, I think that, it's at least worth a discussion moving forward, to try and
definitely.
mitigate.
I mean, we didn't talk a lot about the championship itself yet, but we did have that in Game 2 of the championship where you and I were both finding hygiene items. We kept finding hygiene. And Maris just so happened to find the food item that he...
Right, and that's not to take anything away from him. I mean, he found it. He ran through the same distance that we did, and, did arguably more buildings than both of us. And it just, he found those items, and, props to him for finding them, because that's freaking not easy. I honestly thought we were going to go for the full hour, and none of us were going to find either one of them. And, he was able to find both, and, he searched the right spots. I probably missed a couple of restaurants that I should have gone into in order to look for those. And in hindsight, I did miss some restaurants, and now I'm kind of kicking myself because I'm looking at the map in my head and I'm like, oh no, there's a Bronto gas right down there that I should have searched for food items. There's, the restaurant right there that I should have.
See, I missed a lot of spots too because I went the opposite direction that Sizzle was going because he didn't tell us at the start where we were actually going to search. So I went the opposite direction. It's like, oh, there's a car over here. Let me go this way to get this car. And I got tethered early on. So when I got tethered early on, that kind of screwed up the rest of my match. So.
I actually kind of like the fact that he didn't tell us, though, because it meant that we had to keep an eye on the map. And I think that moving forward, and again, this is something that can be adjusted, per ref beforehand. I think that it's something that should be stated beforehand. Be like, hey, just so you know, keep an eye on me because I'm just going to be wandering.
Right, yeah.
But,
that's
like
the
he
only
said,
thing I changed probably because I didn't know that ahead of time. So if I would have known that ahead of time, I would have kept more eye on him. But...
Right, but like he said, it was the creme de la creme. It was the finals. Where, we're going hard or going home, literally. So I can understand, giving us as little guidance as humanly possible in terms of, what he's going to be doing and how he's going to be moving, because that's probably how I would handle it. I would just be I'd like hop in a car and be like, peace, suckers, and just,
right.
And, if someone happened to hop in the car, I'd be like, hats off to you for paying attention to the fact that I got in the car. But, I'm generally more sadistic, when I'm running games. So, It would be, something
We'll
along
have to
those
see
lines.
how you ref games when you ref next time.
Oh,
Because
it'll
you
be
haven't ref
fun.
one yet.
It'll be fun. Beware all of you who are in my games. It'll be fun, but keep your head on a swivel.
Sounds like good. But just to touch on the championship a little bit more. Basically, this is a series of 3 games, and since Maris had no losses yet, either myself or Falldown had to beat him twice in 2 of these games in order to force sudden death. So basically, the first game was a time trials race around the whole map, like Falldown said, and Falldown won that one. I think he had like a time that was maybe a minute and a half to 2 minutes better than my time, and I was in third. So that kind of shows you, how close that still was.
Yep, and I would like to tip my cap to my viewers for giving me that win, because I don't think that I would have done it without the insane rules that they give me. The fact that half the time when I'm driving a car, if I can drive cars, I can't hit zombies. It means that going full speed, I have to be able to react to things that are in the road,
Right.
just that much faster so that I don't hit them. And that definitely helped doing the time trial and driving the time trial. So thank you to everyone that watches my channel and checks that out and gives me those rules, because it helped a lot. Like that training that you guys put me through on a stream by stream basis is what got me this win.
Oh, you definitely did a great job. And I mean, I know my biggest problem was that, like, I just couldn't remember the course. So I'm like, wait a minute, am I supposed to turn right here? Like, so I got screwed up a lot of those points, but...
Yeah, you kind of shot yourself in the foot right off the bat when you took a left out of the parking lot instead of a right.
Yeah. Because I forgot which direction I was supposed to go. So that was my biggest problem. But, oddly enough, if I would have remembered the course, I think I might have had a shot at that one, because there's like a river portion where we had to go up the river, and I did the river part with like no hiccups at all.
Freaking
like,
Aquaman here.
So, yeah. I don't know how I did that, but I had no stumbles at all the river. So like I could have made up all the time right there if I didn't screw up with one of the parts. There was one part where we had to like go through the silos, and in hindsight, I definitely know where the exit of those silos is, but I just wasn't thinking at the time, and I was trying to go through the start of it, so I kind of messed that up. But
yeah, well, I mean,
it is what it is.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I was talking about before, where you've been playing for a while, and your nerves get on the, your nerves get to you, or your adrenaline gets pumped, and you're like, no, like this is basically a straight shot. I'm just going to go right through here and it's going to be perfectly fine. And then at the last second, you're like, oh crap, no, that gate isn't open,
Yep.
And that's kind of those individual moments are kind of, what led to a championship for me. That, for yourself, when you took that left out of the parking lot instead of the right, and then when Maris kept hitting the rocks in the river, like those two things slowed you guys down enough to open the door for me to be able to get in there and get the win.
And then we already talked about game 2, how, Maris found his items in a scavenger hunt. So
like a bloodhound. Dude is like a bloodhound. It was unbelievable. It's just like, oh yeah. No, here we go. Oh, you know what? Testing the wind, throwing the grass up there. I smell Twinkies. Just like running into a random building, and it's like, oh, Twinkies, sweet. Like, oh,
what I thought was most funny about that too is like, out of all the games, that's the one he won. And like Maris had been talking, previously in the tournament, how he didn't like the searching games because, you're depending on luck a little bit more. And I just found it funny how that's the actual game he won, is how the luck was on his side, even though he hated it.
And he crushed us. He
did.
To all your listeners, like hands down, like he got everything before either one of us had half of the stuff. Like he just talk about a demoralizing defeat. He calls time, and we're just like, what are you talking about? Call time? We're going for a full hour, right? And he's like, no, anyone can call time. We're like, what? No, that's not how this works. This works where we go for the full hour, and then we find somebody. Like, no, but I found everything.
Yeah, because I didn't have the liquor or the food item yet. I'm like, no. I don't have either one of those yet. Like.
No, me neither. I didn't have either of those. I had broken apart my rucksacks because I was just like, we have time. We have time. We'll be finding more stuff. So, no, I mean, hats off to him. He just, what a demoralizing beatdown that he gave us on that one. Just
definitely.
Soul crushing defeat on that one.
And then, of course, game 3 we talked about a little bit earlier, but that was basically a new version of I Can, where we had to do 8 challenges in a half hour, and you went first. You
Mhm.
kind of set the bar with that, and you set
Yep.
a really awesome bar because I had a strategy going into that. Like my strategy going into it was one of the challenges was to flip 2 cars, and I know I'm not good at flipping cars. So my strategy the whole time was, okay, I'm just going to avoid the flipping cars. I'm going to do the other 7, and I should be able to win this. But unfortunately for me, you actually flipped 2 cars. So you basically forced me to do that because the only thing you didn't do was you didn't kill one feral. So you basically forced me to try and do everything. So I'm like, well, if I have to do everything, I have to try and flip these cars. So that's what
Exactly.
tripped me up the most.
Exactly. And to that point, I didn't find another feral. So it wasn't a case of, oh, well, there's a
Right,
feral over there and
exactly.
I'll just do it later. It was, I traveled that map for 30 minutes and just no ferals came out. I had
And to
killed
your
the first
credit
one.
too,
And
like
just
you
no.
had everything done besides finding the last feral at like 23 minutes in.
Ugh,
So
it's brutal.
like you were
Heartbreaking.
looking for one feral for like 6 minutes.
Heartbreaking. But it is what it is. I mean, that's the thing. Like you never know. If I had used your tactic, if I had climbed more cell towers and stuff like that, I mean, who knows? I probably would have found him. Probably would have spotted him off in the distance. And it honestly didn't occur to me until the very end when I was down to like 3 minutes. I was like, oh, I could probably climb stuff and take a
Right.
look around. And at that point, it was too late, and I already felt like an idiot. So
Yeah, because at that point you already dished your car, so you didn't have a car to go to
Exactly.
cell tower with.
Exactly. I was just kind of like, all right, well, I blew up my car, and I left my repair kit. God only knows where that is. So we're going on foot, and we're listening for the scream, and we're gonna hopefully find one. And just and again in hindsight and looking back at it, climbing those cell towers and taking a look around was key, and it was a part of the map that just didn't occur to me. So it goes back to everyone has their own plans and everyone has their own tactics, and it can work in different ways depending on how you use them. So
Yeah, definitely. Props to you because I had a whole strategy planned, and you basically screwed up my entire strategy by flipping those 2 cars. Like I was not going to attempt that at all. Like there was no way in hell I would have attempted that if you didn't do it. So.
Well, and then you got screwed on the cars you had available to you. Like we went over it before that you were trying to flip the Google car, and that's just not it's not really feasible. So you did not walk out and find 2 sedans that were just like sitting there like, hey, flip me.
But at the same token, though, I mean, right when I started my game, like Sizzle's like, yeah, the time will start when you drive your car. I'm like, I'm not driving my car to start because I saw a car on the map that was like right next to my car. So I'm like, I'm just going to start with this car here.
Yep.
And that was the one car I flipped. So I did flip that car. It was a truck.
Yep.
But I just couldn't flip the second car.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a truck is probably one of the harder ones to flip. And yeah, you just got unlucky with the cars that you found. And I think, again, kind of, what we went over before, I would have suggested that you just leave. You take your Google car, you fill it with gas, and you drive, and using the Google car, you could find a couple sedans that you could crash and destroy, and you could flip them over and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but
and
again,
part of my
that's
plan when I
hindsight,
found that car was I was going to use that car to find a play card. So I had it all planned in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this car. I'm going to flip this car. Then after I flip it, I'm going to take it to find a play car. After I find the play car, I'm going to destroy this car, and then I'll be good.
Exactly.
Like I had that all planned out, but part 1 of that was flipping the car, and when I couldn't do part 1, I just got so fixated on flipping that car that I forgot about the rest of the parts.
Yep, and that's that that gambler's fallacy of this time it'll work, this time it won't.
Exactly.
Yep. This time it'll X, Y, or Z. So it's funny how it can take a hold of you in the weirdest way when you're playing. You're just like, no, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to. Keep pulling those slots. One of these times I'll win. So,
but at the end of the day, you came in with the win on that one, and you had 2 wins to 1. So Maris got his first loss officially, and then it went to Sudden Death, and Sudden Death was another demo derby, and it was basically you and Maris had the same exact car, and you had one car. Myself and Sizzle were refilling you guys on gas, so basically it was one car, just blow up that one car, and you're good. And
it was
eventually got the job done.
It was an awesome fight. And, I got to really tip my cap to Maris on that one because he was whooping my ass for a while there. And I apologize for the bad language. I just
No, you're fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he was whooping, he was whooping me pretty bad there for a little bit. And we were trading blows back and forth. And as we ranged out into the map a little bit, a feral and a juggernaut spawned kind of within the zone that we were playing on. And as soon as I saw him, I knew that I wanted to use those to my advantage and try and,
Right.
bait a hit. A single Juggernaut hit on a car is going to do so much damage that it's going to be really hard to come back from that. And so when it first popped up on the field, I drove past it as fast as I could in order to bait that attack, and it just happened to land directly on Maris. So, the fists came down and just watched a door go flying. I was just like, yes, that is what I needed in order to really kind of pull ahead.
And the Feral did a lot to him too, because the
yeah.
Feral was actually on his car at one point. So.
Yeah, I was. That was another thing, was I was purposely, again, kind of driving the Feral towards him in order to try and, give him aggro on the Feral so that it would stay the hell away from me. Because there's nothing you can do. You're in the middle of a lake. That thing gets on you. You're not getting it off without taking some significant damage. So, just trying to use what was available to deal as much damage as I could, and it ended up being incredibly effective because he took another hit from that Juggernaut, and he wasn't recovering from that point. Those 2 hits put him. I think he started smoking shortly thereafter, and I'd taken a few big head-to-head hits from his truck, but that's not equal to the pounding that he received from the Juggernaut or from the Feral. So. It was a crazy match, and he stuck in there really, really well considering how beat up his truck was. And then finally, once we moved out of the lake, it just came down to kind of who was going to get that last big hit. And I gotta say, it ended just the way that I wanted to see it end, with him on fire,
hits, yeah.
on fire and flying through the air. And when that happened, it was so nice. It was so nice.
And of course, as winner, you did get some prizes. So congrats on that. You won a Bronto Gas jacket.
Yep.
You won a State of Decay pin, a T-shirt, a Undead Labs signed poster.
Yep.
And State of Decay water bottle. So, those are great prizes, and congrats on that.
I am stoked. I love those guys. I mean, hats off to the State of Decay folks and Undead Labs in general for, supporting the community, supporting this event, supporting events like these. For those that didn't know, this was not, something that they even knew about before Undead Trials 1 came about. This was just something that was organized independently, and they as a company and as a team just said, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, do it. Sure, we'll give you stuff. We'll give you posters. We'll give you shirts, and have been incredibly supportive of this entire process. So, there are...
Yeah, and speaking of that, even one of their artists, Brant Fitzgerald, he actually agreed to give all of us an individual drawn drawing. Mm-hmm. So myself, yourself, and Maris, as the final 3, he's going to send us all an original drawing, which is awesome.
Exactly.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, which is, again, awesome. And it's going above and beyond than, I think a lot of other publishing companies would do. This isn't a, an official tournament. This is just something that, very dedicated fans like yourself put together, and they, scooped it up, and they just said, yeah, no, that's awesome. Do it. You have our support. We will tweet out about this every single day. We will tweet out, the individual matches. We'll tweet out about, what you're doing and how things are turning up, and, talk about it on the weekly or the bi-weekly, webcasts and stuff like that. And it's just they went, it was awesome. The amount of support that they gave you and gave Sizzle and Mr. Dart in making this come true, and providing the victory swag was surprising and awesome and above and beyond. So
absolutely, Undead Labs is such an amazing studio, and I love them for all their support. They do a great job supporting the community, and it's really nice to actually be part of a community like this that has support from such a great studio, because a lot of studios, if fans do things on their own, they'll kind of be like, oh, okay. And they won't really do anything about it. They won't actually acknowledge it. And also, it's really refreshing to see a studio actually acknowledge things like that.
Exactly. And to give prizes and to send stuff out around the country and around the world.
Definitely.
They're shipping something to, where's Maris? Is he in Russia?
Latvia.
Yeah. They're shipping something to Latvia. for something that they didn't make, for a tournament that was run by the fans. Like, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Definitely.
That is the definition
really
of going above and beyond.
Too,
so yeah.
And to see, them support us through this growth too, because this is actually the fourth event. We had Decay Fest 1, Undead Trials 1, Undead Trials 2, and Decay Fest 2. And through all four of these events, we keep trying to grow the events more and, make them better. And throughout all of this, they've always supported us. And, we're not stopping here. Undead Trials 3 and Decay Fest 3, we're going to try and make those bigger even yet. So, we really appreciate their help.
Exactly. And it'll be awesome. And I can't wait for, the more news to come out. But first off, Blaise, take some time off. Get some sleep. Definitely, take your time on this one. We understand, how much time you put in, how much time Cases put in, and Dart put in. And again, shout out to Dart. I hope he's doing well. We'll be here when you get back, buddy. Just take the time you need. Mental health is incredibly important for everyone that streams or plays games. For everyone, mental health is important. So take care of yourselves. But yeah, to Undead Trials 3, take your time, buddy. Take your time. Like, we want you to be, full strength, and we want you to not get sick of us. Don't get sick of us.
Who, me or Dart?
Yes.
No, yeah. I mean, I did feel pretty bad, like, missing the episode on Saturday, and then Undead Trials ended Sunday, and like basically Monday, and we're recording this on a Tuesday. Like, pretty much Monday and Tuesday, I kind of just took the days to sleep. So I did feel kind of bad about that, but hopefully everyone understands I need some sleep. So.
How dare you? How dare you require sleep?
But tomorrow I do plan to get back into things and start talking with Sizzle, because Undead Trials 3 and Decay Fest 3 are coming, and we definitely have some conversations to have, and we definitely want some more staff to help us out. So, if you feel like you're someone that wants to ref out there, or if you feel like you're someone that wants to, offer ideas, we definitely have other areas that we're looking to include people in, and we're going to have conversations about that, and, hopefully get some more staff to help us out, because there's definitely areas that we could use more help next time, and we're hoping that, 65 isn't, the bar. We're hoping that's just like, the lowest bar that we're going to keep rising above. And hopefully next time, maybe we'll get 85 players. Maybe the time after that, we'll get 100, so we'll try to keep growing this.
Yeah, join us on Discord. Chat with us. We're fun.
Definitely. And, if you think, you're a great State of Decay player, then, try your hand at this. Maybe you can take, Falldown's 2-time crown. We'll see.
Never. But seriously, even if you don't think you're great, just come out and have fun. Like, that's the thing. Harsh, not royal. Didn't want to do this. Like, he wasn't someone that was really interested in playing. He had to be convinced. He was like, I don't know if I want to do it. We're just like, come on, man, just play. Give it a shot. Try. Come out, have fun. Just enjoy yourself. That's what this community is about. That's what this game is about. Games in general are supposed to be fun.
And look what happened. I mean,
exactly.
Harsh Not Royal pulled up the biggest upset of the tournament. So, like, that could happen to you too.
Oh, God, where's the whiskey?
You'll never live that one down.
No, I won't.
But you still retain the title, so I mean,
true.
You can hang your hat on that. So.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, I think we covered everything for the tournament. I covered a lot of the matches I kind of held dear. We covered all the games, so unless you had something else to say, I mean, we pretty much covered, recap the tournament. So it was a lot of fun. I can't wait for the next one.
Right there with you, buddy. Right there with you. I mean, again, like, my hat's off to everyone that took part. My hat's off to everyone that was interested or that watched. And thank you to Undead Labs. Thank you to you, to Sizzle, to, Maris, to everyone else that really did this, to Mr. Dart, all the competitors. This event was incredibly fun. It was incredibly fun to take part in. It was fun to watch, and the excitement that people had in the Discord channel leading up to matches, after matches. I mean, discussions after matches were in there. Like, it was fun.
Definitely.
Everything about it was fun. The fact that people in the middle of Undead Trials were like, oh, this is, this community is so welcoming. I want to be a part of Decay Fest. This community is so welcoming, and these look like so much fun. I can't wait for Undead Trials 3 so that I can join in. You know, that's kind of, that was so encouraging to see within Discord.
Absolutely.
And to kind of
you know,
follow along.
right after it ended, I mean, we had people like Scarproof and Harsh Not Royal. They're like, can we sign up for Undead Trials 3 yet? And I'm like, I love the enthusiasm, but not quite yet. You know, just give us a second.
Exactly. But I mean, that's the thing, you know, even if this is the first time playing, well, maybe not if it's your first time playing the game, maybe play the game a little bit before you sign up. Or you might just be, you know, disappointed, or you might be discouraged. But, you know, if you play the game, if you enjoy the game, sign up, hop in. You never know. You never know what can happen. You might, you know, pull a Harsh, Not Royal, and you know, get into the finals, or get into the semifinals. You could go up against me. You could go up against Blaise. You could go up against, you know, anyone else, Screw Loose and Maris, and take us down and get your own write up in the Undead Trials 3 current stand-ins. That's the kind of thing that's just fun. It's the stories that get written during the tournament, as well as, you know, the stuff that comes at the end. And especially now that, you know, Brant is giving out some prizes for second and third place. And if this keeps going, if this keeps getting bigger, you know, we're looking, you know, who knows what comes next. And that's the exciting part, I think.
Exactly. And real quick, we kind of indirectly talked about them, but I do want to, you know, give a quick shout out to all the people that were in the semifinals, the final 8. So obviously there was myself, yourself, and Maris, who made the finals. But beyond us, there was a small hedge. We had Diatom 13, also known as Mr. Huge. We had Scarproof, Screw Loose, and Harsh Not Royal. So those were our, you know, semifinalists. So major props to you guys for making that far. You know, we hope you come back with the same veracity that you had, you know, this tournament, and do the same next time.
Yep. And as a note, Screw Loose, for those that didn't watch or are not familiar with Undead Trials 1, Screw Loose was the partner of Sarkoth. So he was actually the duos champion. He was one of the duos champions
with Sarkoth, yep,
from Undead Trials 1. So, you know, he made it back on his own and was able to make it into the semifinals. So it was a big win for me that I was able to finally take him down and move to the finals. So it was a good match, a good 2 matches. I actually played him twice, and both of them were just brutal. They were incredibly hard. So yeah,
definitely. And you know, Undead Trials 1 was in Daybreak. Undead Trials 2 was in the base game. So, you know, whether you like Daybreak and you're really good at Daybreak, whether you like the base game and you're really good at the base game, we will have events on both. I think Undead Trials 3 will be back to the base game again. And then I think Undead Trials 4 will be Daybreak again.
Meager
that's
Valley.
Probably what we're thinking of.
Meager Valley, maybe, possibly. We'll see.
Well, we do have to go to Trumbull Valley at some point when that comes out too. So
That's true. I love me some Meager.
That's actually the map I did my I Can game on, so it was pretty fun. But, you know, that being said, I do have one last question before we finish here. You know, you already said you had fun, but the last question I have for you here is, Undead Trials 3, will you be back to defend your title once again?
Oh, of course. You gotta, I mean, if you want to get the sweet stuff that Undead Labs is going to be giving away for Undead Trials 3, you got to go through the champ. I mean, there's no other way I can do it. People. You know, if you want to take down King Hippo, you got to step into the ring.
There you have it, people. And you know, if you want to sign up for Undead Trials 3, we'll have news about that coming soon. But you know, you're going to have to go through the champ again, so you're not going to get a free pass. You know, Falldown's not going to step out and then just make it easy for everyone else.
Yep. No, I'm going in full effort. Going maximum effort every single time that I play. I maintain that even to the end, I was probably the most competitive person that was involved. Just that's Absolutely. Kind of how I go into it. You know, I go in to win. So I'm glad I was able to, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And those of you who are listening, you're all going down.
But we'll have to see about that, because, you know, I will actually be back for Undead Trials 3 myself, so...
Yeah, you're going down.
It might be the last one I do, and that's not because I don't like competing in them. It's just because since I am the organizer and I am, you know, running this or having a huge part in running this, I don't want to run all the tournaments and compete in them once we get enough people. So once we get big enough, I think it's only appropriate that I should bow out, but We're not there yet, so until we get there, I think it's okay if I can beat still.
And I would agree. And I would also just like to point out, I don't know why I keep saying King Hippo instead of the champ. It's just, for whatever reason, it got stuck in my head. And King Hippo in Punch-Out always made me laugh. Like, he was just the most ridiculous character. And as you know, as serious as I am and as competitive as I am, I'm also a pretty big clown. So that I found that for whatever reason it popped into my head first, and I just kind of picked that up and ran with it. Not that King Hippo would be able to run anywhere.
Hey, it works though. That could be your new title. So
yeah,
I'll have to call you that all over Twitter.
Fall down, go Hippo.
There you go. You can use that as your extreme title.
Nice.
But Falldown will be back. I'll be back. I think Morris has said that he might retire. So if you want to talk him out of that, please go after him. Talk to him on YouTube, talk to him on Twitter, and tell him, you're not ready to retire yet. You got to, play one more. We got to face you again. So talk about a retirement, guys. You can do
definitely.
But that's basically all we have for today. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me at Blaise XPerience. You can email me, theblaisexperience@gmail.com. And you can find my Discord in the show notes. You can also find the Undead Trials and Decay Fest Discord in the show notes. I'll put those there. So if you want to find out more about the events, we have a civic Discord just for the events. If you want, I'm also on YouTube. I have a Facebook group. So there's some other ways you can contact me. And my gamer tag is the same as my Twitter, Blaise XPerience. It's capital BLAISE, capital XPERIENCE. And Falldown, if people want to get in touch with you or find your stream, how can they do that?
You betcha. So I am on Twitter. I'm Falldownstream. So at Falldownstream is what I tweet out of. I have my own Discord channel. I stream on Twitch Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays under Falldowngoboom. So twitch.tv/Falldowngoboom. And that's really it right now. There are big plans in the future for YouTube and doing all that. I'm just not there yet. Father of two and all that stuff. Just the amount of time I can
definitely get that. Yeah,
can build that out is but stay tuned. There's more and better stuff coming for my channel and for, like I said, YouTube, Facebook, and all that stuff. I do have a YouTube channel. It's just it's not set to my name yet. So once we have that set up, I'll push that out there as well. But for right now, if you want to get a hold of me, hit me up in Discord. Tweet at me. Or stop on by for one of the streams.
Definitely. I definitely recommend his streams. He's a great streamer, very interactive with his chat. He has all these rules that he comes up with his chat, so it's a lot of fun being in a stream.
Oh, the chat comes up with it. The chat comes up with it. It's not something that I do. It's if you're watching my stream and I screw up a couple times.
That's what I was saying, though. It's a lot of fun if you're in his chat, so you can kind of come up with the rules.
Exactly, yeah. You can punish me. So you can tell me that I have to kill the character that I'm playing, or I have to drop my guns, or something along those lines. It's a good time.
So, anyone in Undead Trials 2, if you're a little bit salty about Falldown winning, step into one of his streams and give him a hard rule.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah. And they have been. They've actually been, the viewers, the last stream were really nice to me. They took away some really hard rules, so I'm sure that'll turn around. That'll turn around pretty soon, I'm sure.
No, it's definitely a lot of fun, so I definitely recommend everyone checking it out. One of the rules I know you've talked about you did was you play with your controller upside down, and I can't even imagine doing that. So
yeah, so
props to that.
That was a pain in the butt. But it was fun. It was definitely fun.
Maybe I'll force you to do that all of Undead Trials 3 or something.
Oh wow! I'll have to do some practice.
That'd be
fun. I'll have to practice that a little bit more.
Yes. But thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate that. It's a lot of fun to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you again for hosting and for kind of the recap of Undead Trials 2 and Undead Trials 3 and beyond.
Yeah, hopefully people enjoy this episode. They get to hear some insights from, two of the finalists. I think that'd be kind of interesting to hear. So hopefully people enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. Well, you know what? Even if they didn't, I enjoyed being here with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, bud.
But to you, the listeners, I'd appreciate any feedback on this episode or any other episodes. So definitely leave us an iTunes reviews if you can. And if you want to find the podcast, you're obviously listening to it somehow, but if you want to listen to it another way than you already listened to it, we are on Stitcher, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on iTunes, Radio Public, Blueberry, Podbean, basically any directory you can think of, except for a couple. I think we're not on Spotify and one other one, just because for whatever reason I can't get it on there yet. I'm trying, but we're trying to get on there.
You'll
so
get there.
Hopefully we're on there soon. Yeah, exactly. So, I'd appreciate any feedback, and thank you for listening to the episode, everyone. So thank you one more time, Falldown, for joining us, and congratulations on your second championship.
Thanks, Blaise. I appreciate it. And thank you again for having me, and thank you to the listeners for listening.
We appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, once again for listening to the Blaise XPerience.